Daniel Dubois against Filip Hrgovic. Now, guys, I'm very excited, and I think both of these fighters deserve a lot of credit for taking what is a high-risk, high-reward fight for both of them. With that said, I am a little bit concerned about the effect that a loss here could potentially have on the trajectory of my fighter, my favorite fighter in this matchup, Daniel Dubois, and his career going forward. Now, it's nothing against Filip Hrgovic, but I do like Daniel Dubois. I like his personality. I like his physical attributes, and I think he's got a lot of potential going forward in the sport. But I'm a little bit concerned that there are some parallels here to the earlier stages of another Don Charles trained fighter, and I'm talking about Derek Chisora. Because Derek Chisora, much like Daniel Dubois, was involved in a lot of big fights early on in his career, and in some of those fights, he acquitted himself very well. He did better than a lot of people were expecting, and he was able to get a lot of credit in the ring for performances in which he ultimately lost. And I'm talking about Derek Chisora against Vitaly Klitschko, Derek Chisora against David Haye, Derek Chisora even against Robert Helenius, a fight that he did win, but which officially counted as a loss on his record. And the problem was he was promoted as well, it's worth noting, by Frank Warren. But at a certain point in time, he kept getting put in big fight after big fight after big fight with very little break in between in terms of fights that would allow him to maybe develop more. And after losing multiple times to Tyson Fury, losing to Helenius officially, losing to David Haye, losing to Vitaly Klitschko, and on and on and on, at a certain point, Derek Chisora's ability to, I think, be taken seriously as a contender in the heavyweight division had substantially deteriorated. And I'm worried that Daniel Dubois might be getting the same treatment. You see, because Daniel lost to Joe Joyce, he lost to Alexander Usyk, and then he repaired his reputation. Oh, and by the way, I should also add, he had a shaky-looking performance against Kevin Lerena as well, a fight that it did look like he was actually in some trouble in that one. But the bottom line is Daniel Dubois, he had restored a lot of credit to his name by the fact that he beat Jarrell Miller. But in my opinion, that fight was actually a much closer call than it should have been. I made a prediction at the time where I said that if Daniel Dubois stood in the center of the ring, exchanged with Jarrell Miller, he would have a much bigger chance of losing the fight than he needed to. I actually said he needed to get his tactics right. I said he needed to move around the ring. He didn't really do that throughout the whole fight, and it caused him a lot of problems. He ultimately got the stoppage, and he showed that he couldn't actually take a punch. He showed that he does have heart, and he showed that he's not necessarily a quitter like some people, I think, perceived him to be after the Joyce and the Usyk loss. But it came at the cost of potentially losing that fight when he didn't need to, just in order to show that he's tough. And so the reason why I'm concerned about that is because if he's going to beat Filip Hrgovic, he needs to get his tactics spot on, and he can't go into this fight just trying to prove something, show that he's tough, show that he's not a quitter, show that he has heart. If he does that, even if he acquits himself well, but loses the fight, that's where you start to get into this Derek Chisora territory, where you've lost to Usyk, a great fighter, where you've lost to Joe Joyce, a very good fighter, where you've lost to Filip Hrgovic. We don't know how good Filip Hrgovic is at this point in time, but it's still 3 losses. Throw Dubois in there against another high-profile matchup straight away. Let's say he loses to Hrgovic but looks good, so he gets put in there against, let's say, someone like Francis Ngannou, someone like Deontay Wilder, someone like Zhilei Zhang, loses that fight, even against someone like Jared Anderson, loses that fight potentially, and suddenly he's in, territory of starting to traject more, or rather to transition more into being a gatekeeper rather than being a contender. He wouldn't be at that point yet, but it would be starting to trend, I think, in the wrong direction. And that's why, even though I give Daniel Dubois a lot of credit here, I think regardless of the outcome of this fight, he needs to be careful, and he needs to be focused on, or rather his team needs to be focused on improving his skill set and actually patching up these holes in his game, not just moving him from one high-profile fight to another, trying to get the most paydays that they possibly can as quick as they can. Because at the end of the day, he's only 26 years old. There's no rush here, especially these days when the heavyweight division is full of guys who are closer to 40 than 30. There's no reason why Daniel Dubois can't be allowed to develop. And I think there's a real concern from my point of view that if his team, if his promoters just want to try and get as many paydays from the Saudis as possible, that it could potentially put Daniel Dubois' long-term career longevity and his ability to potentially actually develop into a complete heavyweight at serious risk. if they try and go down the Derek Chisora model of just putting him in big fight after big fight after big fight, regardless of whether he loses, as long as he puts in a good performance. So Daniel Dubois against Filip Hrgovic. I don't know yet which way this one's going to go. I probably lean towards Hrgovic a little bit, but in fairness, his performance against Zhang was rusty. His performance against Dempsey McKean wasn't stupendous, and you can't really take a lot away from what he did against Mark Demori in his last fight. So we don't really know what we're going to get from Filip Hrgovic either, but I think it's kind of fair to say that Daniel Dubois is probably the bigger name, the bigger star. Certainly, I would say he probably has the bigger star potential in this fight, and I think he also has more to lose in the sense that if he loses this one, if he's got a third loss on his record, people are going to start questioning whether he has the ability to beat these big guys, and he's going to really need to be careful not to get a fourth and a fifth loss very quickly after that. So guys, I think this is a very exciting matchup. I'm really interested to see how the fight plays out, but like I say, I think Daniel Dubois and his camp need to be very careful not to just take too many risks unnecessarily just for the sake of a big payday. Now, when it comes to Filip Hrgovic, just briefly, and I want to touch on this as well, I think he's also risking something here in this fight because he's been in a position to get his mandatory title shot for years. And as far as I'm aware, that mandatory position is on the line with the IBF in this fight. So correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe his IBF mandatory position is on the line in this fight. And that's a lot to put at risk when you've held that position for a number of years now, still haven't got a title shot. And the reality is, because Filip Hrgovic is not, I think, respectfully, the most marketable fighter out there, if he's not successful here, it might, I mean, realistically, he's been waiting a couple of years already and he's been the mandatory. So if he's not the mandatory, you don't imagine he's going to get a title shot anytime soon. So it's not a risk-free fight for Filip Hrgovic by any means at all. He's got a lot on the line here as well. So let me know, guys, in the comments, what do you think of this fight? Who do you make the favorite at this early stage? And do you think Daniel Dubois' team are making a mistake by putting him in there so quickly against another big name? Let me know, guys, what you think in the comments. Thank you, as always, for watching. I appreciate everyone who tunes into these videos. Hopefully you guys are having a good week, and I will catch you in the next video.